Don Global presents
the DG Recruit podcast on everything headhunting and recruitment. Achieve the life and career you envision. What's up, game changers? It's your host, Don, founder of Don Global, the headhunting and career coaching company helping you achieve the life and career you envision.
In today's DG Recruit podcast, we're going to swing back to the business development sales side of things, and I'm going to share with you 6 pro tips as it relates to client development and sales. So if you haven't heard already, we are headed into some troubled times. We got some recession issues coming up next year. Most likely Q1 and Q2 are going to be pretty rough. At least that's what everyone's telling me. So definitely start saving your money. But that aside, today's topic is all about sales. So I am more than happy to break down for you what worked for me back in the day when I had to do a shit ton of cold desk development. Now, mind you, I don't really have to do that anymore these days because I don't have to do it at all, actually, because in my rec-to-rec business, I've not had to sell a single client. I've been using all social media, all word of mouth. So I just haven't had to do it. It's just a different market, though. You can't use what I'm doing right now on most technical markets due to the competitive nature and also where the clients are hanging out. Unlike rec-to-rec, the clients are not hanging out all day on LinkedIn, even though a lot of them are. And I would highly suggest everyone who hasn't already to take our social media marketing course because it is a necessary tool that every single recruiter absolutely needs to do headed into the next 2 to 5 years if you want to be a serious player in your field. So that's just, again, that topic aside, because all of that is going to help your business development, right? Like a precursor to today's conversation is really focused more on the phone sales stuff, which is obviously the good stuff, but don't forget, in today's selling environment, you need to have everything. You need to have the digital presence. You need to have LinkedIn. You need to have recommendations. You need to have content. You need to ideally have some sort of medium that makes you an expert and allows clients and candidates to find you in the midst of all the noise. And unfortunately, those people who cannot make it out of the noise have to do a lot more of the hard work, aka cold calling, regenning, like nonstop. Instead, you want to keep on top of their brain so that you don't have to do so much manual labor. But again, I'm going off topic. Today's pro tips on business development, again, centers around phone call sales. So let's just focus on that in this podcast. I will absolutely talk more about all those other things some other day. But this episode is, again, all about phone stuff. So number one, what I want to say is the biggest differentiating factor that I think every single client feels with prospective salespeople that are reaching out to them is, do they give a shit? And the thing is, a lot of salespeople do not. They really do not. They're literally just hitting their sales targets in terms of making enough dials and being on the phone just long enough that they can clock it in as a KPI. Now, I'll tell you, I give a lot of shits because I'm very money hungry, and I knew that if I did not give a shit, I would not get any recs. And if you don't get any recs, you don't have shit to work on. If you don't got shit to work on, you ain't gonna make any money in this business. So number one, the easiest way to get clients to listen to you is to just give a shit. I mean, this is immediately going to set you apart from like literally 80% of your competition. 80% of your competition is just making the dials because they're supposed to. They don't actually want to come and solve serious business issues. And if the client does not feel that you actually need to get in there, they will not even have a minute to listen to you. So how do you act like you give a shit? This is where I teach people. Apparently what I'm doing is called the AIR method. I didn't even know that I was doing this until somebody that used to work for me told me I do this a lot. It's called acknowledge, ignore, and resume. This is a pro tip because only the most pro of salespeople acknowledge, ignore, and resume. Because most salespeople, especially junior ones, just call and drop the phone. Call and give up. Call, make their pitch, and get out of there. They're not hanging on. They're not really trying to have a conversation, and because they frankly don't give a shit, right? Even if they gave a shit, it's not giving enough of a shit to actually do the difficult things required to do to actually get the deal going, right? So again, the problem is you have to act like you really want this relationship. You really want this rec, if there's a rec that you are intent on getting, as in you heard from a live lead that this is happening and you want the rec. Or it's just a key account that you really want to break that you know you would add a lot of value to. Right? So selling with emotion is critical. And acting like you give a shit is really simple. All you have to do is practice your word bites in advance. And when you're on the phone, you really have to jazz yourself up and do a little bit of mental voodoo, what I call the rain dance. You really want to just tell yourself, I'm going to nail this shit today. I'm going to nail this shit today. I honestly used to say this, and I still do. Sometimes before some really difficult calls, I literally will tell myself, I will nail this shit today. I will get this. I will get it. I'll tell you a funny story. Today, it was raining. Grace and I were trying to get lunch, and it was raining in Manhattan, and I really wanted to get some food to eat. And there's this delicious meal that they sell at the Urban Space in the Vanderbilt building. And that's like, a good 10 blocks away from our office. So I really want to get this food. And I'm literally thinking, we need an umbrella. I really want to get an umbrella. However, my cheap ass, I don't want to pay for an umbrella. I don't want to go and spend $20 for a stupid umbrella that I already have. I have like loads of umbrellas. I don't want to buy another one. So I wanted to borrow one from a luxury hotel nearby. One of my friends was visiting, Jen Bolso. You might have heard her on the podcast the other day. So Jen was visiting New York, and I've stayed at the Royalton waiting for her because she stayed there last time she was here. And I know it's a bougie hotel. Bougie hotels have free umbrellas that people can borrow. So I said to myself, I'm going to get one of these goddamn umbrellas. I'm not going to pay for an umbrella today. I'm going to get this umbrella. I'm going to borrow it. I'm not a guest, but I'm going to get one. And I literally had that intention, and I said it in my head so hard, so loud. I was like, I am going to get a goddamn umbrella. And then so Grace and I embarked on our journey. I was like, Grace, we are going to get a free umbrella. Watch. We're not going to buy one because at this point she's like, let's wait. I'm like, nah, we're going to borrow this umbrella. So then we go to the Royalton 3 blocks away. Go inside, and I asked the guy in the front. I made a move for the umbrellas because I saw them. They were just hanging out right near the front door. As I'm walking to the umbrellas, the guy goes, hey, you can't go upstairs. I said, I'm not going upstairs. I'm just grabbing an umbrella. He goes, all right. I take the umbrella, and I say, thank you. I'm going to return it later. And I left, and I got the umbrella. I know this is very mumbo jumbo shit, but that is literally sales. It literally is just telling yourself, I'm going to get this shit today. It's going to fucking happen. And then guess what? It actually happens. I shit you not. Like, sales is just that magical. Just trust me on this. Like, this has happened to me so many times where I've literally said, this deal is going to close. This deal is going to close. Obviously, I go and make any effort that I can to make this deal close, but I set that intention. I'm going to fill the rec. I'm going to get this deal. I'm going to find the candidate. I don't know how. I don't know where, but I'm going to do this shit. Right? That's the act like you give a shit. So all of these are methodologies that work, and you can definitely try. And when you sell with emotion, your client is going to feel that level of vibration. When you are telling a client, no, listen, I really need to understand your business because like this is what I do. I help top companies in this particular niche find people in this very narrow focus of XYZ type of candidate. Again, I believe in niche recruiting. There's no point doing generalist sales. You need to do niche because you can't sell a general solution to an individual leader, right? They all have different pain points. So focus on conveying to your prospect that you actually give a shit, that you are different than your competitors, and you are here to solve a problem. So that's number 1. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go on. Number 2, know your product inside and out. Now, this one is pretty damn obvious, but a lot of people don't take it seriously enough. They just wing it. So what I mean by knowing your product inside and out is that when you're dealing with clients, you need to know your candidates really, really well. But at the same time, you need to understand the rec really, really well, because a client is not going to believe you if you cannot whip out key industry words in a millisecond. If you do not get to the meat of the conversation fast enough, they will not trust that you indeed are quote unquote an SME, a subject matter expert, right? So when I did sales for regulatory writing, this is where I did a lot of cold calling, because eventually I did executive search, which is less cold calling. When I was doing heavy cold calling on a cold desk, I would literally call the client and I would say, oh, hey, oh my God, it's so nice to catch up with you. I'm so happy you picked up the phone. It's been a while. I wanted to share with you this information about this medical writer that I just found. They live in Hopewell, New Jersey. They work at a large pharmaceutical company, and they're looking for a very reasonable salary. They've been at the same company for the last 2 years now, and they're kind of a little bit itching to see what's out there. So, they're kind of open-minded. I'm working exclusively with this candidate. It's a passive candidate. They're not actively looking. And trust me, I would do this and clients would listen because I know the product well and I'm telling the story, right? I'm telling the story of an actual human being. And again, acknowledge, ignore, and resume. I'm not even letting the prospect speak, because if I can catch them and if they're listening, I'm going to win. So I go, and they really like Novartis. Novartis is a top choice company. They've heard a lot of great things about it, but due to the confidentiality, it's not easy to move companies. So they're using me exclusively to represent them, to look at the open market. Now, salary wise, they're pretty open. Anywhere from 90,000 to 100,000, 20,000 is reasonable. Obviously, they have some RSUs that they need to collect on, but all this is negotiable. And obviously, I wanted to say hi, Matt, because it's really important for us to catch up, whether now or later. Obviously, I want to keep you apprised when there are candidates like this coming around. Now, when you talk fast and you memorize this pitch down pat, they don't have a minute to break your speech, because they're like, holy shit, here is somebody who actually gives a shit about their job, has an ounce of professionalism, that they actually have the product of who we're looking for. They're not selling us some empty solution like, hello, did you know that I'm a really good recruiter? Let me learn about your business. No, I'm going right to the solution. Right? And now this is not orthodox. A lot of people will say, oh man, it's a little too wild. You need to sell your value prop. This is my value prop. Me knowing my market, I'll say this candidate is an expert when it comes to CSRs. They've worked on ISS and ISEs, 2.73, 2.74s. They've just done a massive NDA filing. That means you know your shit, okay? And your client's going to understand that. So whatever it is for your market, you better be able to run this spiel like nobody's business. And when they ask you, what's your candidate setup, you better be telling their whole backstory. Well, they grew up in the local area. They have a husband and a wife and, or whatever the hell, right? They've got a nice little family. They live in Hopewell. They've got a very nice setup. They're looking for a hybrid schedule. 2 to 3 days is totally fine. Right now, I guess the main pain point is, this last few years have been really exhausting. They've been at the same company for a while. They just haven't looked externally. So this is more of an opportunistic hire. They're open to looking at Novartis, and they would love to just meet somebody like you and just learn a little bit of the culture before making a serious commitment to actually leave. Whatever it is, experiment and try it, right? But you need to know your product inside and out. All the keywords, and that means you need to know the recs. Right? You need to understand what are the pain points, what the clients need, and what are the keywords in the recs. Because if you don't know the recs, then how could you tailor your candidate to match the recs? And again, it doesn't mean you need to talk to every single client and ask them, hey, what is a medical writer? You should already know what an accountant looks like, what a scientist looks like, what a biostatistician looks like. You don't have to ask a client to educate you for you to educate the client that you actually know what you're talking about, right? When I'm trying to sell a car to somebody, I don't go, hey, what do cars look like? What kind of cars do you like? I start talking about cars and their natural attributes, right? What's so special about my car brand? Whatever it is, you have to show the client that you actually know your shit. So you know your candidate, you know the market, you know the price ranges. Now, I used to get it down to a point where if they ask me about my candidates, anything, 95% of anything a client asked me, I would either know it, or I would know enough of it, or I would bullshit enough to do okay. But again, you just need to know these details. If they ask you, hey, how many RSUs do they have? You kind of need to know. You need to say they have 20,000 or however many. You need to tell the client, hey, guess what? Their 401k match is X%. And then their bonus is a 100% multiplier, and that means they need XYZ to leave, right? You actually need to know all this stuff. And if you don't know it, you really need your candidates to tell you, because you have to know your product. You can't work with the market if you don't understand the intricacies and the nuances between the value prop of your product being humans. You need to know what they're doing and what they're dealing with and what they're facing, or else you can't sell them on anything. Right? So you need to know your product inside and out and be able to articulate that in a clear storyline so that your client is completely comfortable moving forward. Now, you also have to have a bunch of open questions ready, because the next topic, you're just going to have to wing it. Wherever the direction goes, you're going to have to whip out all the best open questions you possibly have, which leads to point 3. You need to know where the clients are in the sales cycle and act accordingly. If a client is saying, we're just not hiring, I totally understand. What does that mean? Because when clients tell me they're not hiring, it's either they're just not hiring in that exact moment, or they're kind of on freeze because of, financial issues. What's stopping you guys from hiring right away? Because what I understand is these medical writers don't come around a lot, and it seems like everybody wants them. So I just would love to understand your timeline so that I can best align with you if I have another one of these medical writers come up in the future. Whatever it is, make sure that you can assess where they are at in the buying cycle, right? How often do you guys hire? How often is it possible to expand your team? What's the eventual goal? What's your vision for the company? What's your vision for the team, right? All of these things, know where they're at and try to assess how serious their growth is and where their past experiences with. Cool. I mean, I'm probably not the only headhunter to call you. So how have you experienced working with my competition? Obviously, we got companies like Real Staffing, we got Pro Clinical, we got XYZ. Drop the names. Ask them, how has it been working with my competition? Understand their pain points, right? Where are they at in the client education cycle? How comfortable do they have like a go-to person? Has someone monopolized that account or not? Is it up for the taking? Am I going to be the monopolizer now? Right? Know where they're at, because if their answer is, oh yeah, my best friend works at Real Staffing and they got all of my regulatory writing needs covered, you know what you're up against. Cool. Being that you already have a go-to source, sometimes it's still helpful to have a second eye, because the market is so big that not every single recruiter has every single candidate under their belt. I spend all of my time unearthing passive candidate, some that maybe your friend at Real won't have. What are your views on considering leveraging a different recruiting firm opportunistically as those candidates arise? Right? Wherever they go, have conversation points ready. Right? Because your ultimate goal is to sell them on working with you. And before you sell them on it, you need to understand where they're at. If you don't know where they're at, how could you sell to the need? You don't even know where they're at. You're going to sell blindly. So selling blindly is the fastest way to ruin rapport. And rapport is precious. You only get one shot at it. You do not want to ruin it right off the bat or ever. And you can ruin it easily if you are not asking all the questions and selling blindly. So keep asking. Prepare a whole list of open questions and be ready to go at any juncture. Number 4, leverage the shit out of your MPC. MPC is a recruitment training term called most placeable candidate. A lot of recruiting companies, especially British ones like the one I was trained at, taught us how to do what's called a candidate sell-in. Candidate sell-in was what I was doing earlier, where I was rapid fire talking about my candidate in the most utmost detail, in the most clear ways, with no ambiguity on what I'm here to do, in an authoritative, market-leading, confident tone. Right? So when you have the MPC, you're going to leverage the shit out of it. You're going to use the MPC to pull what's called a ghost spec. A ghost spec is when you are hiring, I want to make sure I know what that person looks like. Let's start talking about that person. Basically, you're trying to inch them up the sales cycle of moving from a ghost spec to an active opportunity to send a candidate to them opportunistically, eventually moving up them further up the food chain into a potential C job, which is like an open position that's not exclusive. And then obviously you want to move it up to a B job. You want to have time slots for the candidate to interview at. Then you bring them up to A job. A job means that this is now an exclusive job on a client that really wants you to place with it, right? So you want to move up the food chain in terms of client relationship. Well, how do you do that? You need a really strong MPC to start the conversation, because they need to know that you got the goods. If you do not have the right MPC, you won't even get the MSA signed. Right? Master Services Agreement. You need to get the MSA signed. How do you get an MSA signed when you don't have a product immediately to encourage the client to quickly get the MSA sorted out, your rates sorted out, so that you could start officially submitting? So you need a really serious MPC. Whether or not this MPC is a real human, that's up to you. You can sell an actual candidate that you're working with, or you can sell the client an ideal candidate at a lower cost. This is just recruitment sales 101. Not all of this is going to be the goddamn truth, because the reality is you need to paint a convincing picture of a candidate that is enough to get a client to really, really engage with you. And sometimes that means stretching the truth a little bit or lowering the price point so that you price a principal level candidate at a senior consultant price. Now you've got the client's attention. You're giving them a valid profile that now they're very motivated to see, and whether or not that person really exists by the time the MSA is signed and the contract review is over, that's a different story. That candidate could have found another job. That candidate could have moved countries for all we know. They could have been real. They could have been fake. It doesn't matter. My point is this: you have to really know your MPC and sell them so that the client thinks it's the best thing since sliced bread. That is literally the job of a recruitment salesperson, is to sell MPCs every single day, perfect your pitch of MPCs so that every client cannot turn this opportunity down. They cannot risk not having you as a vendor because your MPC pitch was too damn good. So leverage the shit out of your MPC. Make this MPC the most desirable of all motherload of candidates, and your clients will have no choice but to join you because they are curious and they want the MPC. And whether or not you have the exact same MPC come submittal time, that's when you have to hustle and get as many candidates as possible and do the other part of your job, which is hustle for candidates. But the reality is I have never once been caught using MPCs in a bad way or revealing confidentiality. Now, I never reveal confidentiality. That's something you never do, by the way. So when you're doing your MPC pitch, you don't go start talking about people's names. I'm talking a blinded MPC pitch. So you can have the resumes to match, but you never send any company names, any school names, nothing, because they can cross-reference it and find out very easily who you're talking about. So don't ever let clients know who you're talking about. It is, again, a blinded MPC pitch. Number 5, we're almost done with the list. Hang with me here. Number 5, keep the prospect on the phone for as long as you humanly can. Now, I stick by this. I don't believe in respecting other people's time, okay? I believe in building the relationship so that I can get in there. Because if I can get in there, I'll get the business. And you can't get the business if you have very superficial conversations with people, and if you're scared of them, and if you don't actually break the corporate veil. Right? A lot of people do not want to waste their prospect's time. They treat the prospect like a goddamn king, and that is wrong. They are a prospect. They're to be had because if you do not have them, somebody else will. Somebody else smarter and braver and more enterprising and more hardworking, gutsier, with more charisma will. Like the people like me. That's what I did every single time. Every single time I got a hiring manager on the phone, I would be sucking up to them so hard that you would puke. If you saw how hard I was sucking up to them, you would be like, wow, yikes. Yeah, well, that's what it takes to make money. You want people to open up recs to you? You want people to advocate to you and get through freaking HR to sign you up? They're not going to do that unless they really give a shit about who you are. And they're not going to give a shit about who you are if you don't have long-ass conversations with them. And this goes for clients and candidates, right? When I have an intake call with a candidate, we become friends in the first phone call, ideally. We get into a very deep conversation. The intake call lasts for at least 30 to 50 minutes. Intake call. Yeah, absolutely. They have to be very serious conversations because if I'm going to bank my reputation on somebody, those are going to be some intimate conversations. We're going to get to know each other. And I'm not going to wait for the most opportune time because there is no opportune time. When I call, it's the opportune time. When I call a client, it's time to talk. And if they are willing to hear me out, I'm going to maximize the shit out of that conversation. I'm not going to let that client off until it really socially makes sense to let them go, because now that's at this point, they really have no more patience for you. And you can kind of feel it, right? You can feel it on a call. But at the same time, if you make friends with them, they will talk to you for a longer extended period of time. So how do you keep someone on the phone for as long as you humanly can? Keep in mind, acknowledge, ignore, and resume. Keep peppering them with open questions. And this is where the book, How to Make Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie is like the best thing ever. Because in order to make friends with someone quickly, you have to be able to ask a series of sincere, open questions. And if you can do that consistently, they will open up. They will talk to you. And obviously, no one's name is a better word than somebody else's actual name. I butchered that statement, but you know what I mean? When you're talking to a client, use their name. Hey, Mary. Yeah, so nice to talk to you. I'm so excited we're chatting, Mary. This is great. These are the subtle things that master salespeople do that bring the prospect closer. Is it psychotic? Is it narcissistic? I don't freaking care, and neither should you. to make sales work, you have to be charismatic. This is just how it works. You want to work the hard way or you want to work the easy way? The easy way is to get people to like you. And the best way to do that is to actually like people. If you like people, they will feel that passion that you have. And that's the game for me. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy it. I enjoy it so much that I've literally made a whole career off of it, right? Talking to people is critical, obviously, to building the relationship. So if you do not keep them on the phone past a certain amount of time, you cannot even build a relationship. They don't even know who you are. They're going to forget about you in like 2 minutes. They're going to be like, oh, there was that one person. I don't know anymore. We don't really talk about anything. Then you failed. You failed in your mission, right? Your mission is to say, how can I make myself indispensable to my client? Well, you got to keep on the phone. So this is where you have to read some psychology books and you have to practice small talk and get really, really good at it. So when I'm talking to a candidate, I have a radar, like a bat. The radar is on point. It is waving around the room, scanning. What's it scanning for? It's scanning for conversations that we can have. It's scanning for topics of interest that you seem to gravitate towards. So when I talk to a client, I'm like, oh my God, Mary, I'm so glad we're chatting. How has your summer been? That's good. Cool. Well, what have you been getting up to? Most people will just stop at it's good because they do not want to pry. But their fear of prying makes them weak salespeople. Salespeople are fearless. They ask these questions. Awesome. Where did you go for a holiday? Oh, that's lovely. Okay, what did you think? Whoa, what did you think of that place? Oh my gosh, I love to hear that. You know, I've thought about this in the past to go there, and I love the show. You know, have you ever seen this show? In this show, they go to this place, and it looks phenomenal. And I've always wanted to go. How was it? Where did you stay? Did you stay at a hotel or Airbnb? What did you think? These are natural conversation points. Doesn't mean you're a psychotic nuisance. It means you are a likable, fearless person that is actually so committed to being an expert at your craft that you got the freaking balls to go and ask the questions that actually you absolutely need to be asking to have a legitimately good small talk conversation, right? Because how could you possibly act like you care about a prospect if you're too scared to even ask them where they stayed? I mean, that is the level of detail that I want to know. Oh, I love Airbnbs. I love that area. I'm thinking of going. Where did you guys stay? Hotel or Airbnb? Oh, okay. What did you think of it? How many people went? How many people could fit in an Airbnb? Before you know it, they're like, holy shit, who is this person? And they're really vibing with you, Right. So small talk is a whole nother thing, but it's incredibly important to keep them on the phone. The longer you can keep them on the phone, the more they remember you. That really is the long and short end of it. Right? The longer you can keep them on the phone, the more probability that they actually remember who you are. And when you tell stories, you can be like, oh, people have asked me, hey, Donna, and blah, 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 bringing your name out. Obviously, they don't know your name all the time, right? So keep them on. And before you sign off, always make sure you have a tight follow-up process. We've talked a lot about this in prior episodes. So make sure you consistently review and remind yourself of it. The last bit, number 6, is you need to act like a pro. And what does that mean? How can you act like a pro? Well, you need to really understand your rates negotiation. There are so many different rates negotiations, and I actually have a whole podcast on this, so go back and look for it. There is a whole spiel as it relates to advocating for rates, how much the rates are, and what do they get at each tier, and what are your standard rates, and what are the rebate periods / guarantees, however you want to call it. And then what are the different negotiations there? Also, retain versus contingent. You should have a whole sales spiel already laid out of exactly how you're going to negotiate all of these factors. And this is something that my company didn't really teach me that much about. I had to really just blindly find out how to do this. I didn't really get very, very, very good at it until I started my own company, because obviously when you run your own recruiting firm and you're dealing with a lot of small businesses, you can really flex on terms. Obviously, when you're working with big pharmaceutical companies, there's very limited wiggle room. But anyways, so still, you have to know your rates. You have to know your terms of negotiation, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and why, right? Why should a company pay you 30%, 35% versus 20% versus 25%? Why? Right? Where is the justification? How easy is the rec to fill? How do you know? You got to show them how you know this stuff. So I hope this was a useful episode that you can leverage to intertwine into your own process and your own mentality as you deal with these clients and candidates. But mostly this was a client sales development, biz dev, client management, whatever you want to call it. This is where you're selling for Rex, right? This is all just verbal stuff that you're going to be doing. Again, on another podcast, I'll talk about all the nonverbal stuff, all the digital stuff you could be doing to driving clients. But this is just something immediately you can use on the phone and incorporate some of these energies, mindsets, approaches, word tracks to get you going. Last thing I want to do for you is I want to ask you to send me any questions you have on contact@dgrecruit.com, because I am happy to make content for you as it relates to sales, recruitment, careers, investing, life success, blah, blah, blah. So whatever you want to send me, please do. And last but not least, I'm begging you to write me a review, please. I need more reviews. This podcast is gold. I know this because a lot of you have said it is, and I get a lot of people saying how it's changed their life, and I love you all. I do, but I need more ratings. I have 46, and we need more. It's not enough. If you like this content, if it's helped you at least one iota of making 1 cent more, please drop me a 5-star review, please. I do not need 3 stars, 2 stars, 1 star, 4 stars. I need 5 stars, please. So please hit those ratings on Apple iTunes or Stitcher or wherever the heck you're tuning into this stuff on. Your confidence will mean that more people will know that this is a valuable resource. Share the love, spread the word, write the review, please. And please do message me, because I'm always looking for content to vibe with, and I'm running out of ideas. I'm starting to sound like a broken record, partly due to age. So please do send me all the topics that you want me to talk about, and I will make it for you. So please leave me a review, send me a note. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and let me know how these sales tips go for you.
I hope DG Recruit is helping you understand the realities, challenges, and opportunities when it comes to headhunting and recruitment. Whether you're already a top biller or an aspiring headhunter, I'd love to get to know you. Sign up at donnaglobal.com to stay in touch on all aspects of career coaching and headhunting. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll see you there. Thanks for tuning in to DG Recruit. This has been a production of Donna Global.